Hello, this is Dr. Mike, and we are talking now about chapter 5, and that would be about the social development of children from infancy into early childhood. Children tend to take on a more social personality, a better interaction with their peers. They go to school, of course, and that gives them opens a world to them that they have not had up until this point. And so they develop, and of course it develops their mind and in more ways than just in the things they're learning as far as coursework, but the social development, the ideas of play. Play is you in times past, you used to hear much more about playing and its importance than you probably do today in psychology, but the children work out different scenarios in their minds and their lives through the idea of playing. It's one of the problems with so much technology today, and that is that it takes away from this activity, and so children can tend to be a little less social. Technology really does kind of destroy the social aspect of a child's life, and so for that reason alone, it should be guarded as far as the time spent on computers and technology. And we're just now learning, and so think the negative side. It's wonderful to be able to be technologically savvy and do all these things, but even for adults, even having technology in your bedroom while you're sleeping at night has proven to be problematic to our sleep cycles, and so we don't get rested enough. And so the recommendation is not to have technologies in the bedroom when you're sleeping. Even your cell phone by the bed has a detrimental effect on your sleep. So these things are just, we're just now learning because the technology age is not that old. And so as we go forward, I'm sure we'll learn other things, and especially about the advantages or disadvantages and advantages of these for children. And so hopefully you'll be aware of that. So we'll talk about the social development of infancy through early childhood. So let's go to our slides, and we will begin to look at some of the things that we want to talk about in this section that I think are important to you. Let me encourage you again to read to be sure that you read your textbook and your materials and get the most out of them, because they're very, very, very important. Yeah, I'm going to have to find my slides here. I've kind of misplaced them somewhere. Or deleted them when I was looking at them. But anyway, the social advantages of childhood are very much very important to the child's development. If they are kept from that, they will no doubt have detrimental things in their lives that will be, difficult to overcome. So you need to, as a parent, or even as a professional, it helps to kind of know about these things. As we've said about so many other things in this course, it's on two fronts. It's for your personal good. It's also for your professional learning as well. So it's really, really important in that respect. Okay, I think we're back on stage now. Sorry about that. So as we enter this idea of a social world, emotional development in a child, it's important that we look at several things. In this chapter, you should be able to describe the growth of attachment during infancy, and then summarize the course of these emergent emotions in infancy and toddlerhood. And then, of course, we talk about play and prosocial behaviors in children and the development of gender stereotypes, gender differences, gender typing. All of that happens during this particular stage. So let's talk about trust and attachment. This is a very big deal with, you will notice that we talk a lot about these first 6 years from birth through 6 years old, because as I said, Sigmund Freud believed that those were the most important years of a person's life, that most of your understandings and your emotional attachments, all of those things were worked out during that time. And if you had problems there, then you had problems throughout life. And most of his counseling were issues that happened in the first 6 years of a child's life. And so we talk about trust and attachment, and this is a majorly important issue with our understanding. From 0 to 12 months, basic trust, mistrust issues with a baby. With proper balance of those two, the infant can acquire what Freud called hope, which is an openness to new experiences tempered by awareness that occurs when trust and mistrust are in balance. So in the first 12 months, the door opens for this child to go out into the wider world, expand their scope, and this idea will either make them do that more or shut more into themselves. There are things that happen in the first 3 years, from autonomy versus shame and doubt, a blend of autonomy, that idea of self awareness, self-control, self-ability, the idea of shame and doubt will help the will in a person to develop, which is the knowledge that within limits, youngsters can act on their world intentionally, and it happens within these gamuts here. You can do things, but you might, be shamed for it. It might rise, cause you to doubt the world and all those things. From the initiative versus guilty, from 3 to 5 years, in this stage, you get purpose is achieved with a balance between the individual initiative and the willingness to cooperate with others. You come to understand, a 3-year-old to 5-year-old comes to understand they can do things, but they also are juxtaposed against this idea of pleasing your parents or pleasing your teacher or whatever. So many times they will not do the thing they wanted to do out of just respect or fear of displeasing someone. There are several steps, according to Bowlby, that children form an attachment or an enduring socio-emotional relationship as to an adult. Those are the ones that are more likely to survive. A baby that's left to itself is probably not going to live, because a baby realizes it cannot live without that attachment. And so if you have a mother, say it's on drugs or something, that never picks the baby up, never touches it, never handles it, there's going to be a lot of despair in that child's life that's going to end up probably causing it to die. Bowlby proposes 4 stages of attachment: pre-attachment from birth to 6 to 8 weeks. The infant's behaviors and responses evoke behaviors in adults, and they create this interactive system. So it's a double-sided thing. The baby responds, the mother, father respond. And so they grow in this bond. First 6 to 8 weeks grow this tremendous bond of pre-attachment. Attachment takes place 6 to 8 weeks to 6 to 8 months. Baby begins to behave differently in the presence of unfamiliar caregivers, and familiar adults begin to identify primary care as a person they can depend on, the person that's with them all the time. So it's not unusual for a child of this age group to become very, very attached to the daycare director or whoever it is at the daycare that takes care of them. They become emotionally attached. That will usually hurt the parents' feelings terribly, that they would like someone else differently. I told you about my sister-in-law that babysat most of her life. That was really true of her children that she kept. Many times she would keep them overnight just because they wanted to spend the night with her away, and she didn't get paid for that. She did it just because she loved kids. But the parents were sometimes relatively offended by that, and yet they knew that she was taking really good care of their children. True attachment, 6 to 8 months to 18 months. Most infants have singled out their attachment figure as a special person who deserves their socio-emotional base. And that's probably usually the mom, maybe the dad. Reciprocal relationships from 18 months on, infants begin to act like partners in their attachment. They grow, it becomes a understood thing. There are lots of different kinds of attachment. Ainsworth comes up with he calls it the strange situation paradigm. There are 3 phases. Child and mother first occupy an unfamiliar room full of toys, and then this stranger enters. Mother leaves the room momentarily, and when the stranger talks to and approaches the baby, comforts it if it's needed, the mother returns to the room, and this is repeated. And you observe the child's reaction during each of those phases. There are classically 4 types of attachment 3 are insecure types, and 1 is a secure type. A secure type of attachment is about 60-65% of attachment relationships. Babies may or may not cry when they're separated. It wants to be with the mom upon her return and stops crying. The avoidant attachment, the baby is not upset by separation. He ignores or looks away when mom comes back. Resistant attachment is separation does upset the baby, remains upset after the mom returns, is difficult to console. And then the disorganized, disoriented attachment, separatism and return confuse the baby, reacts in contradictory ways, like seeking proximity to the returning mom, but not looking at her. So all of those things, when you think through them, are things that you might well have gone through or experienced as a mother. But children do have different ways of expressing that separation, anxiety, and that attachment. There are some consequences. Infant and parent attachment lays the foundation for all of the infant's later social relationships. Think about that. Secure attachment, prototype for a later successful relationship. A child that cannot form meaningful attachment, and there are some that are for different reasons, will have a difficult time with that. Say a baby is born to a mother that's on drugs, and the baby has to be taken away from her and given to a foster home or adopted. It will take a long time for that baby to relax itself enough to form a new attachment and become a baby in the other family, because now that its hope has been kind of destroyed, and it is looking at the world, even though it can't communicate very well, it's looking at the world through different eyes. But if it were meant to be a successful relationship, it would still be a struggle because it depends on the baby and your reorientation of the baby. But it's not a very satisfying first relationship. They're more prone to problems in their social interactions as preschoolers. School-age children are less likely to have behavior problems if they have successful attachment relationships from earlier in their life. Now, think about that for a moment. That's a very important statement. School-age children, once children go to school, they are less likely to have behavior problems if they have successful attachment relationships. That could be with mom and dad. That could be with grandmother. It could be with your babysitter, as my sister-in-law did. So that's a very important concept. As far as the quality of attachment, there's a lot of different kinds of quality, from predictable to sensitive to responsive. And the very positive way is when parents are dependable and caring. Babies develop an internal working model in which they believe their parents are concerned about their needs and will try to meet those. The negative models when parents respond slowly, intermittently, angrily. Infants come to see social relationships as inconsistent and frustrating, and that's a huge problem. I've seen parents do that with a baby in a crib, trying to get their attention, and they were either ill or mad when they came to take care of the baby, and it leaves this sense of the child that people just don't care, and so that will follow it. It will mean that they'll have the same attitude toward other people in their future lives if they don't come to deal with it. Parental training helps parents interact more affectionately, more responsively, more sensitively to the needs at hand. So the other thing is, at what age do children begin to express basic emotions? Well, that's a great question to think about. We'll talk about that in a moment. What are complex emotions and when do they develop? When did children begin to understand other people's emotions and how they see their information guided by their own behavior? So we'll look at that for just a moment and think about it. The function of emotions is important. Emotions have adaptive value. They guide behavior. They facilitate relationships. Theorists distinguish complex from basic. Basic emotions consist of just feelings, psychological change, overt behavior like joy, sadness, anger, fear, distress, disgust, interest, and surprise all occur. In about 8 to 9 months, this is occurring, basic emotions. And as you study the infant's facial expressions and overt behaviors, they reveal much of that in the look on their faces. The development of basic emotions in newborns is basically limited to pleasure and distress. 2 to 3 months, they relate to sadness. 2 to 3 months, social smiles occur. 6 months, anger. And then 6 months after that, they become very wary of strangers. And that's the first sign of fear. When infants are wary of unfamiliar adults, and there's some fear involved. So basically, these emotions develop early, and they can become quite dominant. So as far as complex emotions coming, including guilt, embarrassment, pride, regret, shame, to be experienced, the child must first understand the self and behavior in relation to whether they have met standards or expectations. This is self-understanding emerges around 15 to 18 months, and a complex of emotions emerge from 18 to 24 months. So these are very, very important to the development of the child's understanding. Later on, they will develop feelings like regret and relief. That's about 5 to 6 years old. By 9, these are being expressed appropriately. They're showing cognitive growth. So, there's a lot of things that go on in a child's life in this age range, 5 to 6 years old, from, creatures under their bed to things at school, but they learn, emotionally how to deal with that. There are some cultural differences based on emotional expression. You'll run into children from other cultures that don't smile or don't speak, whatever. Asian children are encouraged to show emotional restraint. European children, 11 months old, will be much more expressive than, say, a Chinese child, because that's the culture that they live in. And then they learn to recognize other people's emotions. This social referencing becomes really important. And as they get older, parents and the child can discuss past emotions, negative and positive, explain how feelings differ, and positive and rewarding relationship with parents and siblings is a good thing. So then regulating your emotions, controlling them. As you get older, you learn to control, and you learn not to act out and do those kind of things. So all of that leads up to being able to interact with other people. It's really important when you are youngster that you learn, and that's the issue around playing. Children that play together, they begin to act out social norms. Like they may have a play family with a husband and wife and kids, and certainly the kids are in different roles. So they learn to play it out. They act it out. They learn from that. And they learn from make-believe, making things up, making stories up. You'll think at this age that they believe it, but they're just trying to get something across to you that they see that they don't believe. And that's a pretty smart kid to care, of what's going on around them. You don't find that too often. So as you think about these different kind of things, think about the value of playing. Somebody said, what can playing have to do with, becoming a well-rounded emotional individual? Well, it has a lot to do with it, because you learn how to act out different things. You also learn how to act out gender roles. There again, that may be part of this confusion that we're currently having in our society, because the lack of play in children. They're now playing video games alone in their room. They're not playing with other children. They have no sense of gender. So I'm just saying that might be one of the issues with why it's such a big deal today. It hadn't changed. As far as numbers are concerned, it hadn't changed since, since I've been around for 60 years. Parental involvement in child's play can lead to improved peer relations. That's usually a huge thing to talk about. Things like playing catch with your son. It's a little late to start, introducing yourself when he's 12 and 13, but it would be great. He would appreciate the fact that you go with him to see games and things and talk shop. That would mean a great deal to him. Any questions about anything we've talked about? Just a word about gender roles, gender identity. This is a huge thing right now, and this could be an 18-week class just to discuss this. I will say this, and I say this having been a pastor for 20 years, and I'm probably not on the side you think I'm on, but I really think there is something to this. I basically left the church as far as a pastor over issues like how they treated gay people, how they treated women. So I'm kind of a little different than probably what you would expect, but I think everybody that there are gender stereotypes and there are social roles that you feel, and you fall into those, especially within the psychosocial kind of a model. You'll find many things that are gender related that you'll see differences in men and women, and they will function differently of doing that. So it'll be very, very helpful for a child if he sees, these roles modeled correctly and acceptingly by their parents. And I want you to read this section very carefully because it applies so well to what we have going on in our society today to help you understand. If you're like most people, you don't really understand what's going on when they talk about transgender or some of the other acronyms that are used. This chapter really talks about that at the end, talking about different gender areas that we need to be aware of. You don't necessarily have to accept it, but you do have to treat people that may feel that way. You can't show yourself waiting on someone and be a hypocrite about it. So you need to know the details. Don't just accept what you hear on TV. Anything you hear over the pulpit at church or the TV, be sure you check it with science and pick out which one will best represent you. So I think this is all these chapters are really great. I think probably if it means more to you as a parent, if you're a parent, if you're not, you're going to come into that one day, or you may have nieces and nephews. And one of the best books that I ever bought, and I loaned it out to so much so I finally lost it, was on birth order, the order children are born, how that affects their behavior and their lifespan. And it's really interesting to read about that. I encourage you to you can find them at most of the book outlets or online, but I do encourage you to try to do that. Okay, guys, this wraps up for me chapter 5, and then we'll come back to chapter 6 and we'll be done for the week. But let me really hit home the fact you need to read your work, you need to spell it correctly, and you need to correct it. Find the things that you have problems with in writing, and reading aloud is a great way to improve your grammar, improve the things that you need. So we're getting into the point where we start working on a research paper, and I want to help you with that. If I can, please let me know how I can be of help. Okay, guys, we'll see you next time, and